process in the beginning, but for technological development, but it is how countries use this process along with policies to successfully implement globalization in the economy. South Korea's experience with globalization has been successful so far, as it resulted in growth and economic success due to South Korea developing into a global free trade hub with complete access to two-thirds of the world's market and around half of the global population. Another example of a driving factor of globalization in South Korea is its technology sector. Companies like Samsung's international collaborations with DreamWorks Animations and partnership with US also had a huge impact on supporting globalization in South Korea. Let's look at South Korea's political and economic system that was impacted by globalization. When it comes to the economic system, globalization promoted trade liberalization policies, opening up South Korea's markets to international trade. This does not necessarily prove successful in the beginning, as it had negative consequences at first, as the world's economy had shocks such as high oil prices around 1970s. However, with macroeconomic reforms and deregulation, South Korea was able to improve its competitiveness in the global market and attract more foreign investment. Korea since then also had a trade-dependent nature, and globalization had a huge impact on the economy, as according to K-Stat in 2020, Korea's trade worth was about 38 million in 1960, but it climbed around 40 billion by 1980. Korea's trade worth increased dramatically due to globalization to around 1.5 trillion in 2019. When it comes to the political system, let's look at South Korea's international relation. Globalization has strengthened South Korea's diplomatic and economic relation with other countries, resulting in more collaboration and cooperation on regional and global outcomes and global concerns. South Korea regularly participates in international organizations and projects which influences global governance frameworks. For example, Korea has been actively participating in addressing climate change through United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. For example, now let's take Porter's Diamond Model, which is a model that explains the key factors that aid in a nation to gain competitive advantage for their economy or business. In relation to Porter's Diamond, South Korea's demand conditions has had a big impact on the economic success due to Korea's consumer expectations for quality and innovation, thus forcing businesses to meet these expectations by giving consumers high-quality products and services. In relation to international relations, Porter's model highlights how South Korea has gained a competitive edge in global markets due to its success in relating and supporting industries. These industries form a strong interconnected network that support and complement each other, ultimately boosting the country's economic prowess. When asking the questions such as what challenges might the legal system of South Korea present for Australia's firm when considering establishing a presence in South Korea, some of them are being that South Korea and Australia have two different legal systems, such as Australia has a common law system while South Korea has a civil law system, and due to the intricate differences in these law systems, there may be challenges when it comes to framing contracts and trade rules and regulations between the two countries. Australian firms may also have to comply with South Korea's laws and regulations like tax, labor, and environmental laws, and this will take government competence, investment, and resources from Australia. There might be language barriers between the two, as South Korea is a predominantly Korean-speaking country and Australia speaks English, and some of the communication in between may go here.
South Korea stands a remarkable example of rapid economic development and industrialization over the past few decades. To analyze the economic development of South Korea, observing the GNI, or gross national income per capita, alongside with the PPP, or purchasing power parity, is essential. These indicators offer insights into the country's income level and purchasing power, providing basic knowledge and understanding. Analyzing the economic development of South Korea, the country's gross national income stands as an astonishing point with 300. Analyzing the economic development of South Korea, the country's gross national income stands as an astonishing point with 3,599 figure indicates a respectable income level for its population, reflecting the country's status as an industrialized nation, showing a 2.51% increase from the past 3 years. Moreover, considering purchasing power parity as a measure of economic development, South Korea PPP value in 2022 was 831.9 per USD, showcasing the relative purchasing power of its currency compared to the US dollar. For human capital development, South Korea's Human Development Index or HDI in 2022 was 0.925 points, representing its high level of human development. Moreover, for human capital development, South Korea Human Development Index or HDI in 2022 was 0.925 points, representing its high level of human development. Moreover, the country's life expectancy of birth in 2022 was 84.3 years, which is higher than the global average due to World Bank 2022. South Korean mean years of schooling also indicating a high level of educational attainment. When considering which measure in the greatest, I think PPP measures in economic development measurement. This measure will help the firm of understand the relative purchasing power of SK or South Korea currency compared to Australian dollar. When considering which measures is the greatest, PPP measures in economic development measurement. This measure will help the firm to understand the relative purchasing power of South Korean currency compared to Australian dollar. This will influence pricing strategies and market positioning. Moreover, this measurement can support each country's economic development that can spread to several sectors. Korea's export-oriented business has led to reliance on imported resources that can create advantage for Australia's export sector and Korean dependencies of the single market.
Assessing the cultural distance between South Korea and Australia involves examining various dimensions of culture to understand how similar or different the two countries are. Two relevant theories and frameworks that can be used for this assignment. They are Hofstede's cultural dimensions and Howe's cultural dimensions theory. These frameworks provide a structured way to compare national cultures on several key dimensions. Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory was created by Greg Hofstede in the 1980s. The study compressed over 100,000 employees from 50 countries across 3 regions. He identified 6 categories that define culture. They are power distance index, individualism versus collectivism, uncertainty avoidance index, masculinity versus femininity, long-term versus short-term orientation, and endogenous versus resident. Let's put our attention in the DPI, the degree in which class differences are accepted in society. South Korea typically scores high in this dimension, stressing a clearly structured hierarchical society where supervisors have significant authority. Australia, on the other hand, scores lower, indicating a preference for power sharing and minimizing inequality. For example, as in South Korea, when issues arise at work, junior employees rarely confront their supervisors directly. They tend to offer instructions in a more consumptionist manner and seldom making decisions that openly contract their bosses. In Australia, employees are more encouraged to openly stress ideas to leadership. The work culture promotes participation in discussion-making process and values employees' input. Learning was a more horizontal organizational structure. Individualism and collectivism definition is opposite when it's supposed to look after themselves into groups. Individualistic societies are more about themselves and their immediate family. Collectivism, on the other hand, places a higher value on a group and everything is team-centered. Korea is a country with a high conception of collective culture that values harmony among groups and the value created by the family as a unit. Australia is an individualistic culture that favors the development of individual power and achievement. For example, as South Korea emphasizes team horizon with companies of organizing group activities like picnic and hiking during weekends or their free time. The focus is more on collective contributions rather than individual development. Australia, on the other hand, does not mention lots of participations in personal activities and does not deliberately organize its team events. Work and personal life are distinctly spread with a focus on individual development. Uncertainty avoidance index is defined as a tourism of members of a cultural society towards unknown events. Korean scores higher, which shows a preference for a more defined lifestyle, while Australian score was lower on this one and is struggling that they are more comfortable with a more flexible lifestyle. Example is South Korea has a detailed and strict regulations to manage employees. Being late or not dressed well at work will get punishment among employee handbook. Australian employees are more flexible in dressing property and less rules about the way to work. You can work at home, you can work in anywhere if you cannot come to company and so on. Masculinity and femininity shows an emotional gender roles like male should focus on confidence, material success. The female is more focused on success in lifestyle and more gentle and humble than male. In this case, both South Korea and Australia are masculine in country, but Australia is paying more attention to the quality of life and caring for others. Example is competition is prevalent in South Korea, where schools and companies often rank individuals based on scores and performance. Companies set performance bonus and to reward those who contribute significantly to the organization, sometimes at the expense of personal time. Although competition is also encouraged in Australia, companies offer flexible working hours and additional holidays to compensate for personal time lost, striving for a balance between work and family life without enforcing overtime, sacrificing personal time. LTO dimension measures the focus on future awards among past and now. South Korea get higher scores in long-term orientation than Australia, which means they are more emphasized in and unlike Australia, it keeps a balance between long-term planning and respect for tradition activity. For example, is traditionally South Korea had the high savings rates among families and individuals, viewing investment in education and further planning as crucial for long-term success. However, recent years they changed their lives to more similar to Australia, which behaviors like using credit cards for advanced consumptions and taking loans for luxury goods becoming prevalent. As of early 2023, the average household debt in South Korea reached nearly $30,000, indicating significant economic pressure on many families. The indoor dress versus restaurant idea looks at if countries enjoy life or keep strict rules. South Korea has strict rules and like quiet families time more than big parties. Australia is more about having fun and big events for people, not just like families. Health culture dimensions theory explores the ways culture differ in their communication styles and their management of time. It includes 4 points. They are high or low contact communication, personal space, time orientation, and monotrolic or polytrolic time. Because the time is so limited, so I only talk about the personal space one. For the personal space, for propose that concept of personal space varies across different cultural contexts. In Korean culture, personal space tend to be relatively more compact. This can be observed in dining time, where Koreans usually share their food with a group of people gathering together around table to share dishes. In contrast, Australians prefer individual servings of food and they are less declined towards sharing. In summary, Korea and Australia may be becoming more similar in some ways, especially in areas affected by globalization such as technology, entertainment, and consumer culture. However, based on Hofstede's theory of cultural dimensions, we can also see significant differences between these two countries in core culture aspects. Therefore, we can conclude that despite the fact that globalization had led a certain degree of culture integration, the culture of Korea and Australia remain unique and different in many ways.
Adam Smith and David Ricardo were fundamental leaders in international trade. Smith favored absolute advantage, emphasizing a country's dominance in producing certain commodities or services which they could produce at the lowest cost. Ricardo, on the other hand, proposed the notion of comparative advantage,
which holds that countries should specialize in areas where they have a relative efficiency advantage, even if they lack some absolute dominance. Now, turning to South Korea's economic landscape, it's evident that the nation has achieved remarkable success across various industries, just like in technology, automotive manufacturing, electronics, shipbuilding, petrochemicals, etc. There's so many. While South Korea does possess absolute advantage in certain sectors due to its advanced technology and its skilled workforce, Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage suggests a more nuanced approach to its international trade. South Korea's comparative advantage lies in industries where it can leverage in its highly educated and skilled labor force, advanced technology, and efficient production processes. So, this includes sectors such as technology, manufacturing, um, electronics, and automotive manufacturing. By specializing in these areas, South Korea can maximize its efficiency and productivity, thereby enhancing its competitiveness in the global market. South Korea's electronics sector, which includes heavyweights such as Samsung and LG, makes a considerable contribution to the country's economy. South Korea has recently become one of the world's leading exporters of electronics, and including semiconductors, displays, and consumer electronics. The percentage for exports and GDP contribution fluctuates year to year, but these electronics export regularly that make for a significant share for Korea's overall exports, which has increased the GDP by 20%. The services sector provides most of the South Korean economy. The services sector of South Korea provides most of South Korea's economy, contributing over 58% of its GDP. The services sector progressively has increased contribution to the country, the GDP rising from around 39 in 1965, 39%, and to 50% by 1980, and increased to 58% in 2022. As of 2021, the industry employs more than 70% of South Korea's workers. According to the data compiled by the World Bank, South Korea ranks behind many other nations when it comes to proportion of GDP that is generated by the service sector by jobs, such as Japan, which has 73%, the United States, which has 79%, and the United Kingdom, which has 81%. Similarly, the car sector is a vital part of South Korea's economy. Hyundai and Kia have established themselves as key participants in the global automobile industry. The automobile sector contributes considerably to South Korea's GDP, with car and automotive component exports providing a considerable cash stream. Government policies have a significant influence in encouraging these firms. South Korea has a history establishing industrial policies that support technological innovation, R&D, and investment in important sectors. These policies usually include tax advantages, subsidies, and government-funded research to increase innovation and competitiveness in industries such as the electronics and the automotive manufacturing. Furthermore, when South Korea aligns itself with the principles of comparative advantage through international trade, it can allocate its resources more efficiently and minimize opportunity costs, and ultimately improve the overall economic situation of the country. In conclusion, while South Korea may possess absolute advantages in certain industries, a strategy based on Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage appears more prudent by focusing on industries where it has a comparative advantage. South Korea can strengthen its global competitiveness and foster sustainable economic growth.
In addition, South Korea complies with international trade agreements and domestic laws to provide a relief to industries affected by import surges, adoption of measures such as anti-dumping duty, countervailing duty, protection measures, and tariff adjustment to defend domestic interests. This approach reflects a pragmatic combination of mercantilism and strategic trade theory principles, emphasizing strategic government intervention in trade to enhance national competitiveness and achieve economic goals. For example, taxes imposed by foreign governments on income recognized by a resident taxpayer are allowed as a credit within the limited against income taxes to be paid in Korea. Indirect foreign tax credit is also available for a Korean parent company in cases where the dividends from a foreign subsidiary are included in the taxable income of the Korean parent company. For the dividend received on or after January 1, 2023, the conditions on indirect tax credit loosened the required shareholding ratio for a foreign subsidiary to 10% or more than 25% or more, and the special deduction on corporate taxes is available for small and medium-sized enterprise when they are engaged in qualified business. The tax deduction ratio ranges from 5% to 30% depending on our corporate location, size, business types, with a cap of Korean 100 million if the number of regular employees does not decrease. Now, let's analyze how these trade policy instruments are consistent with different theories of international trade. Mercantilism is an economic doctrine popular in the early modern period that emphasized maximizing export while minimizing imports to accumulate wealth and power. The theory suggests that governments can strategically intervene in trade to enhance their country's competitive advantage in specific industries. Korea's strategy use of tariffs, quotas, and subsidies to protect domestic industries and promote export echoes mercantilist principles. Korea aims to achieve a trade surplus by controlling trade flows, which is essential for sustaining economic growth and promoting national prosperity. In conclusion, South Korea's trade policy framework reflects the understanding of mercantilism and strategic trade theory. South Korea aims to promote sustained economic growth and development through a combination of protective measures and strategic intervention to protect domestic industries, promote export, and enhance competitiveness in strategic areas. This multifaceted approach highlights South Korea's proactive stance in dealing with the complex global trading system and maximizing its economic potential. And South Korea actively participates in bilateral and multilateral trade agreements to enhance its access to foreign markets and promote economic growth. For instance, South Korea has entered into the Korea-US Free Trade Agreements and the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. These agreements aim to reduce tariffs and other trade barriers, facilitating greater trade flows between South Korea and its partners. South Korea's participation in free trade agreements is in line with the theory of comparative advantage, which suggests that countries can benefit from specializing in the production of goods and services in which they have a comparative advantage, as well as from trade from other countries. By liberalizing trade through free trade agreements, Korea seeks to leverage its strengths in manufacturing and technology-intensive industries, while providing access to foreign markets for its export. Trade policy instruments encompass a variety of measures employed by governments to regulate imports and export, with the aim of protecting domestic industries and influencing the balance of trade. These instruments include tariffs, import quotas, subsidies, voluntary export restrictions, and local content measures. Tariffs impose the taxes on imported goods serve to increase government revenue, while import quotas restrict the quantity of imported goods allowed into a country. Subsidies, such as cash grants or tax break, encourage domestic producers to compete with local imports and gain access to export market, aligning with export-led growth theory. Voluntary export restrictions, initiated by exporting countries at the request of importing governments, and local content requirements mandating the production of specific goods domestically, further shaping international trade dynamics. Perhaps the most pervasive trend throughout the international trading system since 1974 has been the reduction in applied tariffs and the opening of economies to international commerce.
Okay, audience, that's all of the news from South Korea Group for today. We'll meet again the same time and the same channel. Thank you for your attention and goodbye.